Hey, so let's talk. You ever felt like you didn't learn anything in school, whether it be elementary, secondary, high school? Most likely is because you didn't. This educational system is in shambles, and I am going to tell you why. Everything from how it was organized and started up until the chaotic mess it is at the present moment. So let's talk. Up until around 1840, the American school system was mainly private and decentralized, meaning that there was no government intervention. Homeschooling was really common. The Americans were well educated and the literacy rates were super high. This was education in America at that time. Now, I guess that was too good because around 1902, John Dee created and funded 129 million for the General Education Board. The General Education Board was a private organization which was used primarily to support higher education and medical schools. With the help of Fred Gates, one of his very famous friends, this ultimately shaped the school system. This board funded the American public school system. And it's basically like if students don't fit into this system, they are medicated and they're labeled. Medicated with ADHD pills, ADD pills, whatever type of pills they want these kids on, and labeled with 504 plans, special education contracts. It's ridiculous. All because the kids don't fit into a certain mold. Around 1918, every state required that students would complete elementary school. This started the little needle moving. 1932, the 8-year study was funded by Carnegie and the General Education Board and laid the groundwork for the educational system. Around 1946, John Dee gave $7.5 billion to the General Education Board, and testing services were formed. All those testing services that you have to enter into, the tests you have to take in order to get into this school and that school, or to make you feel like you belong in a special education class, those tests, this is what they formed around that time. And in the early 20th century, John Dee and Carnegie donated large sums to education and supported the NEA, which is the National Education Association. The Ford Foundation also partnered with them in this venture. And in 1968, Carnegie starts to fund textbooks through the NEA. So they donated large sums of money to the NEA about 20 something odd years prior. And then around 1968, they decide to write their own textbooks because that's exactly what they did. They wanted to add in their information and their lies to the textbook so that you wouldn't know your real history. 1979, we have the U.S. Department of Education is formed. Now you can only imagine whose money backed that. Pretty sure it was Carnegie, Gates, and John Dee. Now, fast forward a little bit, around 1987, the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards was funded by Carnegie. This board was to define what a teacher should know and be able to do. This board also supported the creation of an assessment to see what certified teachers met their standards. So, they wanted to teach the teachers how to be teachers, basically. And then have them go into these public educational schools and regurgitate what they've learned from these elites. Because the elites didn't want free thinkers. They wanted someone who would simply obey authority. They wanted a nation of workers. Now, around this time, John Dee was quoted saying, "I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers." And even more so, the compelling words of Fred Gates, "We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers." Basically, we need them to be docile. We need them to yield to authority and do what we say to do and follow our lies in the textbooks and listen to their teachers who we've certified so we know what the teachers are teaching. We're writing the curriculum so we know that this is how the plan is going to go. And so John Dee and his family, along with these financial elites and their organizations, have been able to mold society by funding and pushing these state schooling for the masses. John Dee and his family and the Carnegie Foundation have also spent millions to bend the nationalist educational system to a system that has favored standardized testing over critical thinking. These kids should not take standardized tests at all, let alone having to take them every month at this point. And not just one standardized test a month, multiple. It is ridiculous how they put these kids in boxes and label them if they don't reach their standards of these standardized tests of what they think they should be. Some of these kids are very gifted and talented in the arts. Everyone is not going to know how to read a passage and answer the questions. All of these kids are not to be put into categories or used as pawns. It's ridiculous that in order to receive federal funding, majority of these public schools have to reach a certain threshold on their standardized testing scores. And if they don't, their funding gets pulled. Around that time, the Carnegie Endowment Foundation was quoted saying that the only way to maintain control over the population is to obtain control over the education. So you can already see the agenda and what they wanted to do all along. 2001 rolls around and we have No Child Left Behind. This enforced even more standardized tests on all children. All government-run schools required to receive federal funding. This has been criticized because it reduces effective instruction and student learning by causing states to lower their achievement goals. The act increased the role of government in guaranteeing public education. This also emphasizes increased funding for poor school districts, higher achievement for poor and minority schools, and new measures to hold schools accountable for their students' progress. This promotes conformity, conforming to whatever you want them to do, conforming to the masses. It ignores unique individual talents and acquisitions and qualities. These standardized tests are seen as a determinant of one's intelligence level. Education basically serves the purpose it was designed to accomplish. They knew exactly what they were doing when they funded the General Education Board. The agenda was set in stone. They knew that they wanted a nation of workers. They knew how to produce them. They basically held that agenda in place this entire time. Nothing has changed. Except now, when the truth is coming out, because it's time for it to come out. It's time for them to get their just due because they know what they've done. These institutions have belittled educational freedom and basically defeat the purpose of democracy. So these children's lives are defined by school curriculum, structured curriculum. The children are identified by their grade, like an adult is identified by their job. I don't understand why children need to be in school for 40 hours a week, 35 to 40 hours a week, and they still don't know the necessary knowledge that they need in order to survive. It's a shame of the lesson plans and the curriculum that is spit at these kids who, if they don't reach a certain score on the test, are labeled to be inadequate, or they have to be retained until they really understand the information that they're being told, when the information that they're being told is not even accurate. You tell me why elementary kids need to know about poems or need to know how to write a letter. We are living in the 21st century where technology is running rampant. This old basic curriculum that they still have in play is all for a reason. And they basically told you in your face what it is, what they wanted, and how they wanted it done. You have teachers in schools who are not even actual teachers. Just because you get a certificate does not make you a teacher. Most don't know that you're going to school to not only be a teacher to these children, but to mentor them, to advise them, to help them out in any way possible. Most of these children know that this curriculum is ridiculous, because what are you learning? What children really need? Biblical courses. They need to know their history. They need to know about God. They need to be taught those things so that those scriptures can help them to become the adults that they're supposed to become. That is what they need. Also, life skills, survival skills, community. They need to learn about money management, career management with entrepreneurial classes, health and hygiene courses, home, car purchase and maintenance courses, marriage, learning about the family, learning etiquette and manners, cooking and baking, gardening, time management, an array of art classes, filmmaking, investing, music, painting, drawing. That's what these children need. These children need someone to push them in the direction of their talents, their God-given gifts, to hone in on what they already have inside of them. They don't need anybody spitting curriculum down their throats and telling them what they have to know for a society that they're not even going to use it in. So what are we really doing? Now, John Dee believed in social control. And I find that ironic because that's exactly what these institutions are doing. It's making you have control over these kids, especially when they don't know any better. The parents don't know any better. Administration don't know any better. It's social control. Because if you think you're doing good by children, by giving them curriculum and making them take standardized tests and putting them in categories if they don't pass or get the grade that you want them to get, then we have a serious issue. Matter of fact, we have a serious issue. Homeschooling is the way to go. Homeschool your child. Take them out of these public educational schools and homeschool them. And if you don't know how to teach the child, teach them what you wish you knew. Because I promise you, every adult wish they would have known something or would have learned something in school that they didn't learn. So you teach them what you should have been taught. And that's how you end that. You take them out of the schools. Because all the schools want is the federal funding, which is why they push so hard on the teachers to do what they're supposed to do and teach a certain way, because in all actuality, the standardized tests are not for the children. The standardized tests are to test to see whether the teacher is teaching the curriculum. That's what the standardized tests are for. They want to make sure that the teacher that they have in place, the one that they certified, is actually telling these children what they want them to be told. And so they test them on it to see, is she actually teaching? Is he actually teaching what we've told them to teach? We're going to know when we get these test scores back. We're going to know if these students actually understand what we're trying to force down their throats. And if you don't meet the requirements, then they're going to be on you as a teacher, telling you that you're doing something wrong. You're not understanding the curriculum. You're not understanding what you're supposed to be doing in society. You're not regurgitating the information that we're telling you. We don't want you to talk to them about their home life. We don't want to allow there to be a sense of community. We just want there to be home and school and keep it separate. Your local politicians should be meeting with the community to enrich the lives and the knowledge of the children and the adults, especially the adults who weren't taught how to become adults. So with that, I hope that you get more of an understanding of what is going on within the educational system and how it was funded, how it came to be, and why it's in the dire situation that it's in. Because it was all an agenda. They basically have said they didn't want a nation of thinkers. It was all to get something accomplished. It was all to make them more money, because that's what they want. They don't need everyone to be an entrepreneur, because if that's the case, it would take money out of their pockets. And just know that everything always boils down to the funds all the time, unfortunately. So Hopefully, this video gave you some knowledge, some wisdom about the educational system. And I hope that you take this and you run with it and tell somebody else. So be blessed. Good night.